Hey everyone, and welcome back to the tutorial series for learning how you can implement Stripe payments in a Flutter app. And so far what we have is a pretty basic UI. You click on this button, you get a toaster bag, and if we go here and click on a card, we will see the snack bar and then it will pop to the back page. Now what we need to do is that we need to integrate the Stripe payments package. So here's the package that we are going to be using. This is called Stripe Payment. And this is at 1.0.7, so installing it would be something like we just add this to our dependencies. Once we have installed this, we have to actually rerun the Flutter run because this will also install the pods for your simulator. So let's do that. So I'm gonna go to my pubs pack, and here I'm just gonna add Stripe Payment and we should be good. Now once the packages are installed, I need to rerun my Flutter run. So I'm gonna do that now. So I'm gonna cancel this one and then I'm just going to run Flutter run again, and I can tell you right now that this is gonna crash, and the reason is that it needs a deployment target specified in the pod file. So let's see the error and then we can start fixing it. Alright, so here it is. If I scroll up, you can see that this actually failed, and it failed in the CocoaPods step. And you can see that it will only work if we specify the deployment target in the pod file. So let's do that. So I'm gonna go to iOS, and inside we have runner, and inside we have this pod file. So here we can basically specify the deployment target as 10.0, and then we will save this and then we will try running it again. So I'm gonna clear this now and then I'm gonna run Flutter run again. Alright, so it seems like everything worked fine now and we can actually start working. So the first thing that we need to do is to initiate the Stripe Payments SDK with the Publishable Key. So let's get that right now. So if I go to the example, you can see that this basically initiates the service with a Publishable Key, and also it sets the merchant ID to test and the Android Pay mode to test as well. Now it took me a lot of time to wrap around this whole example because this has a lot of options, a lot of buttons, and I wasn't sure which button does what. So essentially, let's see how the payment actually works and what are the steps including in the payment. So in this example, we are basically going to create a simple payment from the Flutter app towards Stripe. We are not maintaining any customers or any recurring payments. So in order to make such payment, the first step is to basically create a payment method. We can also perform the second step as the first step, but I would recommend that we go in this flow. So first, we create a payment method via a new card or an existing card. Then we create a payment intent, and a payment intent is something that we should create as soon as we have the step for a purchase. For instance, if the user adds something into the cart and proceeds to checkout, the moment that the user presses checkout, we should start creating an intent with the amount. And then the user can fill the shipping details and whatsoever, but the intent should be there so the server or your app can track the whole transaction process. Now, creating a payment intent requires the amount and the currency. There are other further options, but these are the ones that are required for this tutorial. And the third step is to finally confirm the payment. Now, to confirm the payment, we require a client secret. Now, this is not the client secret which is to be confused with the API and API secret. This client secret is basically retrieved from the payment intent. So when we create a payment intent, we get back the client secret, and once we have that, we can use it to confirm the payment. For confirming the payment, we also have to provide the payment method ID, which we get from the first step. So the values from the first step and the second step are used in the final third step, and we should be able to see a successful transaction in the Stripe dashboard via test data once we perform all of these steps. So let's jump into the code now. So as we discussed earlier, we need to set options, or we need to initiate the Stripe SDK via stripepayment.setOptions, and then we have to provide Stripe options and the publishable key and these values. So I'm just gonna copy this and then we are going to paste this in our code. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the service that we created earlier. So I'm going to go inside lib, services, payment service, and here we are going to use this init method to do the magic. So I'm going to paste this, and also I'm going to import the package here. And now that we have the package here, we can just indent this in a beautiful way. And then I'm just going to replace this test value with the one from my API or from my Stripe. So let's just fix this quickly. And now we should be able to replace this one. So what we need to do is that we need to get this publishable key from the Stripe dashboard. So let's do that. So if you are really new to Stripe, this is your dashboard. And the first thing that you need to do after activating your Stripe account is to enable this view test data so you can work with the test environment. Once you have enabled this, you can go to developers, and here you should be able to see this API keys. Now when you click this, you should be able to see this publishable key, and I'm gonna use this one now, which I will obviously erase after I've uploaded the video. So now I'm just gonna copy this, and then we'll paste this in the code. So here I'm going to replace it with the one that I've got from the dashboard, and now we should be able to initiate the payment system. Now I have to call this init function when we land on the home page. So I'm going to go to homepage dot, and here I'm going to find if we have overridden the init state, which we have not. So let's override the init state method. And here I can simply say Stripe service dot init, and this should basically initiate the Stripe system. Now the next step is to basically work with this pay via new card method, and we also have some functions in place. So let's go to the payment service and see what the function was. So this was the function pay with new card. Now we have to do something here. The first step, as we mentioned, was to create the payment method. Now in this case we need to create the payment method with a new card. And for that, we can use a particular function from the Stripe SDK. So first what we can do is that we can basically make this an async function, so we can use await inside. And then what we need to do is that we can simply say var payment method. Now this is going to be a payment method, and we are going to use await, and then we are going to use Stripe payment. And Stripe payment is something that we get out of the package. So what we can do here is that we can say Stripe payment dot payment request with card form. So this is a method that we can easily use for using a new card, and you will see how easy it is to use the form that is provided by this SDK. So we don't have to create a form for adding a new card. And here we have to provide card form payment request. And once we have actually done this, this basically would allow us to see a card form, and then we can fill the values within there. The next thing that we can do is that we can convert this into a future, and then we can put a try catch to find any potential errors that might occur in this situation. So once we have done this, we can put a catch here, and here we can basically catch an error, and I'm just gonna copy paste this one here, and then we can basically say transaction failed, and here we can say error.toString. Now that we have set this, what we can also do is that we can just move this one out of here and then here, and then finally we can basically print the payment method here. And now that we have changed this into a future, we have to go back to the home.dart. As you can see that this file is red, and that is because we are not actually awaiting anything here. So what we can do here is that we can make this an async function, and then here we can await for the response. So once we have got the result back from this, we can then see if this was success or not. So now that we have saved this, let's try refreshing the server. Awesome. So if now I click on pay via new card, you can see that this really nice UI comes up from the bottom, and now I can fill all the values. And the great part is that you don't have to create this UI. This is already built in with the SDK, and this is really nice to look at and to fill the values in as well. Now, what values can we put here while testing the Stripe functionality? So if you try searching testing with Stripe, you will basically be forwarded to this particular page, or you can just go directly to this link, and this has a lot of cards that you can actually use within your app. So you can see that there's a bunch of cards with MasterCard, Visa, Discover, and whatnot. So what I usually like to use is this one. So you just type 4242424242 and all, and just any CVC and any future date, and Stripe will actually accept this as a payment. So let's try this now. So I'm gonna enter 4242 and all this value. And now if I click done, this will take some time and you can see that the transaction was successful. Let's see what we got on our terminal. So here you can see that we actually got the instance of payment method, and we actually can decode it to see what's inside. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go back to payment service, and here we can simply say JSON decode. And for this, we need to import the .convert library or package. And once we are done, sorry, this should be JSON encode, not decode. I'm always confused with this one. So now that we have saved this, let's try this out and see what comes on the output. So now if I go and click this, and then if I fill the values and hit done, you see that we got this message. And now if I go to terminal, you can see that we got this values back. So we have created the ID, which is the payment method ID, and also some other details as well. So you can see that we actually got the object and things are working fine. And the way that this is working is that we have used the Publishable Key with the payment SDK, so it works actually fine now. Now if we actually want to see those values, we can go to these logs and we can actually see that there were some calls here. So you can see that it's 2:18 right now, and we have got a call right this time with a post at V1 payment methods. And if I open this, you will actually see that this actually contains the card that we just used, and this was the request post body, and then this was the response that was sent back. So you can see all of the values here, and this is the actual ID that we are interested in. So far we are able to create a payment method via a new card. Now the next step for us is actually to create a payment intent, and for that we have to create a new function. So what we can do here is that we can say static, and here we will basically create a function called create payment intent. Here we are gonna have string of amount and string currency, and here we are gonna make it async. And now we actually have to make an HTTP call, and for that we have to include another package. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go to my pubspec.yaml, and here I'm gonna start using the HTTP package. Now this is being installed, and I'm gonna go back to my payment service, and here we have to import this package as well. So now what we need to do is that we can basically import this package here as HTTP, and then we can basically do a post call to a particular URL. So what we need to do is that we can start with a try catch block, and here we can simply say print error charging user, and then we can simply say error.toString, and then in the end we can return null for now. But what we need to do is that we have to do a post call. So we can say var response equals await http.post. Now this requires a URL, a body, and headers. And in order to create a payment intent, we have to provide certain values. So let's see the documentation. So here's the documentation for creating a payment intent, and for that we need to provide certain values. We have to provide the amount, we have to provide the currency, we have to provide this payment method types equals card, which is an array, and we also need to provide the API secret key that I have not fetched so far. But we need to provide all of those values in order to make this certain call to create a payment intent. Now I'm gonna go to my dashboard and I'm going to copy the API key or the secret. And now I can simply copy this one. Let's go back to the code. And here what I'm gonna do is I can just paste the secret here. And then I also have to create the API URL for creating payment intent. So for that I can simply say static string payment API URL, and then I'm just going to use the API base, and this is going to be Stripe service dot API base, and then we can use payments. In fact, it's payment intents. And I also have to fix this typo here and this typo here. So now that we have the payment API URL here and also the secret, we can create the call. Now, what we need here is the URL, so we can simply say Stripe service dot payment API URL. For the body, we need to actually create a body above. So what we can do here is that we can simply say map, and this is going to be string dynamic, and here we are going to name it body equals, and then we are going to put the values here. So we need to provide an amount that we are getting in the function parameter. We also need to provide the currency, which we are also getting in the parameter. And finally, we need to provide payment method types, and this is going to be an array, but this is how we actually provide this. So now that we have got this, we can provide the body here. And finally, we need to also provide the headers, and we have not actually set any headers so far. And actually, it is very important to specify the headers because we are actually making a call. So from here, we are doing a post request. How will the Stripe API know that we are doing an authenticated request if we don't pass any headers? So the way to do that is that we create some headers and then we pass them within this post call. And in order to do that, what we can do is that we can go up here and then we can simply create some headers. So we can call it static map, and this is going to be string because we have the string keys and then we have the headers as string values. So we can call it headers, and then we are going to create this as an object, and here we are going to provide the authorization header. So authorization would be bearer and then space, and then we are going to provide the value of Stripe service dot secret. Now we are going to provide the secret as the bearer authentication. Now the next thing that we need to provide is content type, and this is necessary to be provided because of the type of content we are forwarding to the server. So we can simply say application /x www and then form and then URL encoded. Now that we have set the headers, let's use this in the API call. So here we can simply say Stripe service dot headers. So we basically wait for this response to come back, and then we basically return it back from here by using JSON decode, and here we are going to use response dot body. So response dot body is basically a string, and we basically convert that into an object and just return it back. Now if we want to specify what the type of this response would be, we can simply say future, and we can simply say this is going to be a map of string dynamic. Now that we have set this right, we can actually use this function inside the payment method. So instead of printing this out, what we can do is that we can use the method. So we can say var payment intent, and here we can do await Stripe service dot create payment intent, and we can provide the amount and the currency like this, since they are positional arguments in the method. Now that we have actually provided this, this will finally return us the payment intent, and then we can use it in the next step. So what's the next step after we have created the payment intent? Let's actually first save this and run it, and let's see if we get anything in our logs. So I'm going to save this and rerun the app. Cool, so I can now click pay via card. I'm going to put the values, and now if I click done, let's see if we get success out. Okay, we got success. Now let's see the logs. So I am at my logs now, and you can see that right now we have got this payment intents post here, and if I click this, you can see that these were the request post body. So we sent 150 USD and we sent this as well, and in response we got a particular payment intent. And if we go down, this is the client secret that we are interested in, and this is going to be used when we are confirming this payment. So now that we have got this, let's confirm the payment. So to confirm the payment, what we can do is that we can say await, and then here we can say Stripe payment dot confirm payment intent. Now this function requires a payment intent, so we are going to provide it a payment intent. And this payment intent actually requires two things. It requires a client secret and also the payment method ID. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to provide the client secret, and I'm going to say payment intent that we have above from this previous function, and here I'm going to say client secret, the one that we saw on the dashboard. And then I'm going to provide the payment method ID, and here we can simply say payment method dot ID. Now that we have provided this actually would work fine, and now we should be able to confirm the payment as well. Now this can be actually taken into a response, and we can see what the values are once we get the response back, and then we can also kind of see if it was successful or not, and then we can return the particular result back. But for now I'm going to keep it like this, and now I'm going to reload the app and try this, and we'll see in the dashboard if the payment was successful. But before doing that, I just want to point out one thing, that the value that we are providing from, let's say, home is 150. Now this is gonna be 1.5 US dollars. So if we actually want to charge $150, we have to provide these two zeros at the end. So now if we save this, and now if we refresh the app, we should be able to see $150 cut. So I've refreshed the app now, and if I go here, fill in the values, and now if I hit done, we have got the transaction successful. Let's go to the dashboard. And now if I go back to the logs, let's see what we have got. So you can see that there was a post to the payment intent with this particular payment ID and confirm. And this says 200 OK, so this was successful. And if I go here, you can see that this is the response body. We got these values in the request body, and then you can see if it has any status. So you can see that this has the status succeeded, and this is what we can use in our code to see if this was successful. And if we actually go to the payments, you will see our first payment that was done. So you can see that here in the succeeded, we have US $150. So we have our first successful payment. Now we can quickly go back to the code, and in the payment service, we can check if the response has the status succeeded. So we can check if response dot status equals succeeded, then we basically return this one. Otherwise, we can basically say transaction failed and success is false. So I'm gonna put this here, make it false, and here we can simply fix this as well, and I'm gonna remove this, and then that's it. Now I can go to home page and also show a message if the transaction failed. So here we should actually be able to show the error message as well. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm just going to remove this if condition, because we need to show the message in both cases if the transaction is successful or not. So now that we have saved this, let's try it. So one way of checking an error would be if I open this and if I cancel, you can see that this says transaction failed, and also there is some kind of error. So in order to see the error for a longer time, we can actually switch based on the response. So we can say response dot success equals true, then we show it for 1200 milliseconds, otherwise we show it for 3000 milliseconds. So let's save this and try this again. Alright, so now if I click this and cancel this, you can see that this says transaction failed and this message. Now this is actually a platform exception message, and we don't actually need to show the user this thing because this message is really ugly and this is not user friendly. But actually I'm not going to fix that in this video. I'm going to fix that in the next video, and in the next video we will also see how we can use existing cards to make a Stripe payment. And also I would encourage you to like share, and subscribe this video if you like the content, because you can see how easy it was to learn the Stripe payments with a new card in this particular video. So I'm gonna be really happy if you share it, and then I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.